for making time for us. Let's start here. What makes this Madlanga Commission so significant for South Africa's justice system?
Look, it's significant not only for the justice system, and I'm not sure whether that would be the bigger issue, but I think it sounds like it's got very serious political and constitutional implications. And the reason why I say that is because there seems to be a suggestion, at least on the evidence that has been presented, that the president may have to himself appear before the commission. Several ministers may have to appear before the commission to explain, particularly the issue of the interministerial task team, and what seems to have been said by the minister, Mr. Mkunu, at the portfolio committee that the president was aware of the decision to disband.
Would you characterize this or refer to this as South Africa's biggest corruption inquiry?
Not not necessarily, probably another version, because I think we've had the state capture, we have had the commission that dealt with SARS, and we have had previous commissions, I mean, including the Moerane Commission. Now, corruption has got wider tentacles, and you can't say this is big or small. Corruption is corruption, and it's got actually exactly the same effect, regardless of the scope.
The hearing started yesterday, as we have been saying, with KwaZulu-Natal Province's Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi as first witness. Testimony exposed how the Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu, tried to shut down a political killings task team. What are the chances that this task team would be reopened, and what would be important to have in place to ensure its success?
Look, I think what Mkhwanazi detailed, and quite interesting, is that there was a deliberate decision to have this task team. And not only was the decision deliberate, but seems to have been informed through some bit of an elaborate process to arrive at a conclusion of the most appropriate mechanism. And I think that seems to be the center of his complaint, that the interministerial committee itself did an evaluation, which means they informed themselves that, look, this thing is not working. And remember, the political killings were becoming a hotbed. But the people in the interministerial committee themselves are politicians, so they were also vulnerable. So I think there was some serious concern. Now, the police themselves seem to have conceptualized a mechanism which, as we understand from Mkhwanazi's evidence now, has been approved or at least endorsed by the political leadership. Now, that on its own says this was a priority, at least at cabinet level.
On the question of who the minister consulted before deciding to dissolve this task team, how could he possibly respond to why he didn't consult KZN or KwaZulu-Natal Commissioner, nor Police Commissioner Fani Masemola?
Well, I think that would be very interesting, but I think this brings into sharp focus an interpretation of the Constitution and the law insofar as the powers and functions of the minister are concerned. Now, the law says the minister, and the Constitution and the law and the Act says the minister is responsible for the policy functions, which means to come up with budgets, to come up with the policy, the crime prevention policy, which of course must be informed by the operatives. But I think the disturbing factor here, which I am very curious to hear how he's going to respond to it, is what happens when there's an interministerial committee? Because, by the way, the Constitution says it is the president who exercises the executive authority with other members of the executive or the national executive. Now, it appears that the president has put together this committee of various members of the executive to oversee this function in an integrated way and coordinate. Logically, you cannot understand why one of them would take a decision. Let's say the Minister of Justice would have taken a decision that, look, I no longer want the prosecution team to advise and guide the police task team. That would create a problem both at a policy and constitutional level, because it would mean this person is undermining that decision. But the law is also very clear that you cannot exercise a power you do not have in law. Now, that means to the extent that a minister would take a decision of this nature and say, I no longer want this task team, if the police commissioner says it is relevant and important for my operations, that would be a bit unconstitutional and unlawful. So I think it's important to hear the side of the minister. But whatever explanation he gives, if it is true that he single-handedly took this decision, I think it's going to be difficult for him to explain it.
So, whose advice do you think he would take to disband the task team? Who's this shadowy force? And do you believe he will tell the truth and answer that question?
You know, I think from what I hear from Kwanazi is that there is, in fact, information. And my understanding is that it's not like the police went out to go and investigate whether the minister was friends with criminals or not. In the course of their investigation, they seem to have stumbled into an information from these syndicates or members of these syndicates, which then linked them to the minister. Now, obviously, I think this is where every one of us make a mistake. People think when you talk on a data call, uh, everything that goes with that data call disappears. And it appears that there was an exchange of messages. And Mkwanazi has said very confidently and boldly that we have evidence and this data will be provided to the commission. Now, you see, it's going to be difficult for somebody to come and try and give us a context to what has been written. In law, if you have written something, if, for instance, there's a WhatsApp message that says 1, 2, 3, for you to try and explain how it came about is going to be relevant. We're going to look at the message and what it says and interpret it. So the minister may, if what is being said is anything to go by, I think he may find it very difficult, if not impossible, to extricate himself from this one.
And those claims of the police minister having close ties with criminal syndicates, what scale of damage, excuse me, what scale of damage does such a claim have on the credibility of policing in the country and justice in the country? Can its reputation be saved, the SAPS? We have a new South Africa current Minister of Police, Professor Firoz Kachalia.
Look, I think we must be very careful about who gets affected. You know, firstly, it is the public themselves who get affected when we have people in public office and exercising public power engage just even unethical behavior, never mind a hardcore corruption. But secondly, you must understand that this commission is a product of men in blue who came up and say, we stand for what the constitution say we must do. Now, yes, it may on the face of it also appear to have damaged the credibility and the image of the police, but this very exercise itself, arising from the very same police officers, seem to give credence and credibility to the men in blue. But remember, the police have arrested and they've made quite significant progress on this issue of political killings. So it would be very wrong and dangerous to simply say, because there are these incidents, which don't necessarily arise from the police. It seems like the cartels, criminal cartels generally, have some way of getting politicians. And we have seen that with the SARS Commission. We have seen that with the State Capture Commission. Central to this is always the politicians are very much involved. Of course, there are functionaries, officials within the state who are also implicated and involved, I suppose.
The commission is chaired by retired Constitutional Court Justice Mbuyiseni Madlanga. From what we know of his judicial career, what kind of leadership does he bring to the hearings and the kind of style we can expect him to lead with?
Well, you know, I think if you listen to his his opening address when the commission started, you can understand that is Justice Madlanga for you. He is not neutral on our constitutional imperatives. He's not neutral on what the Constitution expects all of us to do. And he has set the tone very clearly, as you can read many of Justice Madlanga's judgments. He's a constitutionalist. He's a fearless person. He's a measured person. He's a good leader. You can see his demeanor. You can see his smile. But make no mistake about it. You expect him to interrogate issues, and he does generally interrogate issues.
So KZN Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi is back before the Commission today. What do you think we can expect from him this time?
Look, remember, I think the bulk of yesterday was, dedicated to setting up the framework and laying the groundwork with quite serious information already coming. And I think he keeps on saying, I have the evidence to support these allegations. But you must also understand that Mkhwanazi seems to also be laying the foundation for other functionaries to come and put the meat to the bone. So I think in today and tomorrow, we're likely to hear some bit of explosions. I think what we must also appreciate is that it appears that some of the information will definitely be heard behind closed doors. So we're not necessarily going to have the benefit of every single detail. But it's clear that he seems to me to be well prepared. He seems to be knowing what he's talking about. And I think we should expect some serious punches today and tomorrow.
Security and access control, on that point, that some hearings will be closed, it's closely monitored at the hearings. And these strict security measures obviously mean that they need protection, those who are expected to testify. Should there be more done for their protection?
Yes, I think we must distinguish between two things. One is the security around who is going to testify, which has got nothing to do with your physical presence at the commission, because you could be harmed at your home or your family could be harmed. But I think the access control itself at the commission is to mitigate against the possible risk of even the commissioners themselves being attacked or the evidence leaders, because that's possible as well. So I think the issue of the in-camera hearings has also more to do with mitigating the risk of exposing ongoing investigations, which may be jeopardized if the information is flopped out in the public. As you know, our lovely people in the media will not spare a moment to report on anything, even if you say, don't talk about this, it's sensitive. They will actually have a headline that says sensitive information. So I think that's really the whole purpose of the in-camera hearings. And it's not unusual because, for instance, you go to a family court, there are in-camera hearings, so that the sensitivity of some of the things which may jeopardize the process is not compromised.
Modidima, we thank you again so much for your valuable insights this morning.
Thank you very much.
That's attorney and legal analyst Modidima Mannya, just talking about that Madlanga Commission. Day 2 it is today, and we'll be keeping a close eye on that and giving you the latest in developments.
From Cape